project. And so one of the stamp sets that I absolutely couldn't live without was this Dainty Delight. Love this stamp set. I loved it from the moment it came out. And its course is on the retiring list. And when I opened up mine, it hadn't been used. So it was one of those stamp sets that I really thought I had to have, and then I didn't use it. But one of the techniques that I've always wanted to do is called no line watercoloring. And this is a great set to start that with because your images are pretty tiny. And I don't really think you can mess it up. I really don't. So I'm just going to come in. This is just a scrap piece of our watercolor paper. I'm just going to cut it. It's down to like 3, I don't know, 3 by, I'll tell you here, 3 by 6. So I think they come 6 by 9 pieces. I'm just going to use a piece here. And I'm going to come in with the stamp. So this is the big stamp here. And you'll see it's so new that I don't even put the stickers on. Half the time I don't put the stickers on my stamps anyway because I want to get right into playing with them. I'm going to use my watercolor painters. And the watercolor painters come 3 to a packet. And so you get this one with the big fat brush. And you put water into here. Well, you can, but you don't have to. You put water in there, and then one of the things you have to remember is they actually screw on opposite of what you think to keep the water in there. So, and then you use this as the paintbrush end, and it says here these little push buttons. You push that, and the water comes through the brush, and you can paint. You can go to town and paint. I'm going to show you that I use them sometimes with no water in them. So that's one of the brush tips. And then it has this brush tip. It's a little bit bigger of a tip. They're really actually very nice. I want you to see if you can see that. And I'm not going to use that one. The one I'm going to use is actually the fine tip. And so it is a fine tip. I locked up. I see that my phone locked up. So I need to do something. Okay. There. Okay. I don't know why that happened, but it happened earlier today too. And hopefully, there we go. I don't know. Like I said, it's new. I got to figure it out. I got some setting wrong, I'm sure. I know it's me. So anyway, I'm going to use the fine tip on here, and I'm going to use just a jar of water. And my other tool is a Kleenex. I want to keep this tip wet, but not overly wet for this technique. And so I'm going to come in. I have lots of colors here. Shaded spruce, crushed curry, blueberry bushel, blackberry bliss, one of my favorites, and fresh freesia. So those are the colors I'm going to use for my color palette. And you can see that they have ink in the lids. Sometimes what I do is I'll squish down the pad. Like this one, I squish down the pad and it puts some ink in there, and then I add a little water. Crushed curry and shaded spruce, I actually added 1 drop of re-inker in there and used that as the palette. And that was because the ink pad was so tight, I could not get it to squish down enough to put any ink in it. The color that I'm going to use for the actual stamping of the stamp is Smoky Slate. And I'll tell you right now, my Smoky Slate ink pad is so dry. However, with this technique, that works great. If I had a wet pad, ink pad, I would actually stamp it off on a piece of paper before I stamped it on here. But it's dry enough that I can stamp it on here, I get the image that I need, and I don't have to worry about it. So I just haven't re-inked it this week because I've been playing with this technique. So I'm going to stamp that down, and you can barely see it. It's a really, really light image, and that's what you want. It could actually even be lighter than that if you chose to, but it doesn't really matter because in the end, when you start adding ink and water to this and watercoloring, those gray lines go away. And sometimes if you've got a stamp that might be a bigger stamp that has some shading in it, those gray lines will help you shade that and exactly where to put ink. So I'm going to get my paintbrush wet. I'm going to tap it off. And I think what I'll do is I'm going to come in with Blackberry Bliss because I love this color. And I'm just going to mix up some ink and get it onto my brush. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go onto your image and you're just going to color right around that gray line. I'm going to scoot this in so you guys can see better. Sorry about that. I think that's as close as I can get it at this point. So you're just going to put ink right into one petal. And when I'm doing this, I'm going to do every other petal on a flower. And the reason for that is so that they can dry in between. Because if I did them all at one time, it wouldn't have any dimension to it. It would just be a flat looking flower. So I'm going to hope my head doesn't get in here. I just want to get a little bit closer. Bad eyes, you know. And so I'm just going around and painting that first petal on every flower that I want to be Blackberry Bliss. I'm going to show you when I'm done here. I'm going to show you the first card I did, and it's this simple. It truly is. And really, your ink or your watercolors are pretty dry, and they dry fairly quickly. Like that Blackberry Bliss is probably dry. Oh, I want to do this one. What was the hardest part was sometimes you might want to look at the stamp or at the image so you can actually see where the flowers are. So once I've done that, I'm just going to get some more ink on and I can bring in some extra water if I want it to be a little bit watery. If I want my ink to be darker, just go into the ink there. And then once I've got that first petal done, it's probably dry enough that I can come in and do a second petal. This is actually a little bit wetter, but you'll get a little bit of a dimension. You'll get a little bit of a barrier with that. So it separates out each petal. And they do not have to be the same color because it's watercolor. So it doesn't have to look the same. I'll tell you how I picked out my colors for this particular card was I have a canvas hanging in my bedroom that I bought. And it's wildflowers. And these are the colors of the wildflowers. And one morning, when I was planning to do this particular tonight's thing, I was looking at that and thought, oh my gosh, that would look so cool with this stamp set. So that's where my colors came from. Probably why I love it, because it was so simple. All right, and so once you're done with that, then you're going to go to the next color. And so the next color I'm going to bring in is, I'm going to bring in some of this blueberry bushel. And I'm going to paint these little things here, and they're just little tiny petals. But really, this is like a really fine, fine, fine brush at the tip of it. You just barely touch it. And remember, it's watercolor, so it certainly doesn't have to be perfect. And if you make this for somebody, it doesn't matter. They're going to love it. Number one, they're going to think you painted it. And number two, they're going to love it. So those are my blues. I'm going to let those dry a little bit. I'm going to come in with my crushed curry. No, it's not curry. Yeah. Is it crushed curry? Yeah. Crushed curry. And these these are kind of like, I'm just going to dab some color on them. So these don't have defined petals. They just have, I don't know, like, they look like little clouds, if I were going to describe them. So there's, locked up again. Shoot. Sorry about that. Like I said, I don't know why my phone's locking up, but I'm back. Anyway, these look like, you probably heard me talking, but you couldn't see it. I'm going to have to watch this when I'm all done. So these look like little clouds. So I'm just kind of dabbing some color in there, and then I'll come in and dab a little color in again. Now, the blue is probably dry. So I'm going to come in with some more blue and do the opposite petals. So hopefully they look like flowers. Oops. Just gives you a little bit of dimension. And then I'm going to come in with some Blackberry Bliss. And this time, I'm going to make these a little bit darker. So I'm going to do a little more defined line on the petal. And if your watercolors are still, if the paper's still wet, it will just kind of blend out a little bit and move a little bit. But you don't want your paper sopping wet with this no line technique. Oh, look, I forgot a petal here. I'll get that one colored in. I'm bringing some darker color and just put some dimension into those flowers. I don't know, can you see that? I'm hoping you can kind of see that. And then I'm going to come in with some fresh freesia. And I'm just going to dot these. I don't know what kind of flowers these are, but I like them. And just dot those in. And you can do this technique with a bigger stamp set. In fact, I'm going to play with it. Oh, look, I'll just pick up some. I missed a flower here. Get this a little bit darker. And then these have these little spiky looking things here. I'm going to make these. Anyway, I'm going to play with this tonight. I'm going to look and see what kind of stamps I have and do a bigger image with the no line. I'm sure that I'm sure I have an image that I can use, number one. I know I do. But I wanted to play with it with a bigger paintbrush and a bigger image just to see how different it is. And I probably, if using a bigger image, would probably use more water. So there you have it. Now I'm just going to do a couple of leaves because I want to show you, and then I have samples to show you of things that I actually finished. But you'll see it doesn't take forever. I was working on this last night, and I'll show you the card that I did, and I just finished it up today. So I put a lot of shaded spruce onto this brush because I want it to go quite a ways. This is a very light hand, and you're just going to take it where the stems are and go right down the stem. And the light hand, it's really actually, if you get a little heavy, like I just did there, you're fine. But you're just going to paint the stems in. And in the end, this really does end up looking, so the leaves, the bigger leaves, just like the flowers, they go right around the gray outline. Like that. And then I'm going to come down this stem and connect that. There's a little notch there. You can always add in, I mean, you could, at this point, once you start making these and painting them, you could paint in other flowers because they're really very simple flowers. But I'll tell you, I really feel artsy. So I kind of got into doing paint by number, which probably sounds really weird when you're a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, but I was struggling a bit and I needed something that I didn't really have to think about. And so I was doing some paint by numbers, but what I found was paint by numbers are really fun. They take forever. And they don't really look that great when I do them. But this doesn't take forever. It's beautiful, and when I'm done, I could frame it. It's that nice. Good, we're still working here. Sorry. All right, so I'm going to add some more. So you saw how many green, I can do a lot of green. I probably could have kept going with the green. But I just added some more. And again, with the green, you can come back in after. I'll do some of these leaves here. You can come back in after and do a darker shade of that spruce into some of those bigger leaves just to give them a little bit of dimension. But you do You know, for the most part, you want to wait till it's almost dry. Otherwise, they'll just kind of bleed together, but because it's pretty tiny and pretty dainty. That's a good word, dainty. All right, so that's how you no line color. That's how you do the no line watercolors. So let me find the cards that I did. So these were the first ones that I did. I think I actually, so this was the first one I did. It's okay. It's not great. It's okay. I could nitpick the whole thing, but I'm not going to, because you know what? If I make this, finish this into a card, because it's not finished as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't have a sentiment. Probably could use some ribbon or something. If I sent that to somebody, they would think it was beautiful. So I'm not going to nitpick it. I'm going to buck up. And I believe that this was the second one I did. Oh, what happened again? Sorry. This was the second one I did, and I'm happy with it. But you can see where you get the dimension of the flowers. Here and here, you can kind of see the various petals. There's some smearing because my fingers got in the way, but I like it. This was the third one I did. Again, I've got definitely defined petals. I did a little freesia on the upper plants. So, and I actually stamped a sentiment on this one. Now, the one that I finished, that I was playing with last night and today, is very similar to this one that I did today. So I stamped it once here, but here I just turned my paper and I stamped it several times. And then I proceeded to color them all and paint them all. This really does look very similar to my bathroom painting. It's amazing. Okay, and so then I brought in a piece of Blackberry Bliss cardstock, and I'm going to use some linen thread because everybody has gobs of it, right? And I don't know if I ever told you this technique, but with ribbon, I'm probably not going to do it with this, but with ribbon, if I want to tie a bow, I do 4 lengths of my card, wherever the bow is going to be. If the bow is going to be tied this way, or if it's going to be this way, you're going to do 4 lengths this way. That will give you enough ribbon to tie around your card with a bow. Oh, come on. I think what might be happening is my phone is getting really hot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attempt to keep tapping it. Talk a little faster. All right, so let me grab a scissor. I'm going to cut off some linen thread. I'm going to attach this on. And because it's watercolor paper, I'm going to use some green glue. You can see how precise I was with that. I'll flip this over. I cut this the same size as my card base. So my card base is 8.5 by 11 by 5.5. 8.5 by 5.5. Scored at 4 1/4. Fold it in half. There's your base. So I'm going to bring this around. I don't think I have it straight. The nice thing about green glue is if it's not straight, you can move it around a little bit. I'm going to wrap some linen thread around this. Oh, I think that's going to look pretty. Let's do a little better job though. I should have cut it longer. Oh well. I guess when I said 4 for a ribbon, it meant with linen thread too. I probably, when I redo this card, no, I'm not going to redo it. I would probably wrap that linen thread twice. For several reasons, because it looks good and I have tons of linen thread. I seem to order that a lot. Cute card.